Hi, this is the voice of Heidie Calero with another interesting economic capsule on the Puerto Rico economy. Today we are going to talk about two things that I'm sure all of you have right in front of you and you are experiencing. That is inflation, higher prices, and of course interest rates now with the Federal Reserve saying we have to put the brake on inflation, so interest rates are already rising. Let's look at the first graph that I'm depicting for you, which shows more or less inflation and interest rates, whereby inflation is the consumer price index in Puerto Rico, is the red line, and the blue line is the US Treasury bond 10-year yield. So you can see that in terms of the US Treasury bond 10-year from January of 2000, this is on a monthly basis, through almost whatever it is year to date of May 2022, we have been seeing sort of those rates more or less at a lower rate of less than 2%, 0%, but now they are creeping upwards. And inflation, which had been with its ups and downs, notice that now in Puerto Rico as of March of 2022, it's 5.1%. So it's pretty steep what we are experiencing here in Puerto Rico. So what does that tell you? What can you do in terms of inflation? Well, let's look at some of the components which they can give you some idea in terms of you can do. And that is the second graph that I'm depicting for you. And I just want to let you know, this is the clear message. Inflation in Puerto Rico, as in many parts of the world, but I'm focusing now on Puerto Rico, it's imported. It's not because Puerto Rico has all this increased demand, pent-up demand because of the COVID-19. But it's mostly imported because, of course, we buy goods from outside, gasoline, oil, most of our electricity is still based on oil. And because of the Russia-Ukraine war, we have seen these prices just skyrocket. So Puerto Rico is importing that inflation. And what can Puerto Rico do? Well, if you look at some of these components, as you can see here in March of 2022 compared with March of 2019, that's just the year before the pandemic hit in March of 2020. And we see that it's been an increase of 6.3%, but above all, it's transportation. That is the price of gasoline that we're seeing there with 12.7%. Food, 7.4%. Maintenance of house, the housing component, already increasing as well. Medicare care, more or less tamed, 3.3%, but it is also rising right now. Education, 3.2%, entertainment, 2.4%. And here in entertainment, we have seen, again, this pent-up demand. People were just wanting to get out of their homes, going to restaurants, going to concerts, going to cinemas. They are ready for all these services. They want to start traveling again. So part of that pent-up demand is also increasing all this demand, which coupled with not only the international supply chain problems, but also the problem of getting people back to work in certain occupations, such as the one that really affect hotels, the hospitality industry, the restaurants. Well, all that is depicted here in this inflation. So what can you do? Well, if you're, for instance, you are a person who likes to go to eat, 2 or 3 times a week, in nice fine dining, or maybe some of these chain restaurants, well, you might think again and start, reducing, and maybe instead of 3 times a week, maybe 1 time a week. That could sort of save some of the budget that is going to be hurting you, especially in the food component. If you are a person who uses the car not only for work but also for entertainment, and you use your car very very often, I think that you might start rethinking, well, I have to plan my trips so that I do not use that much consumption of gasoline, because somehow or other we have to manage our budgets, and that is in terms of what you can do. And then the third graph depicts for you what is happening in the financial markets. Again, Puerto Rico does not control interest rates. They are set by the Federal Reserve, U.S. monetary policy. Puerto Rico does not have a central bank, does not control that. It has the same U.S. dollar. And in the financial markets, notice what is happening in this third graph with the Dow Jones. And this is from January 22 through the latest day of May 11, 2022. Notice that in January of 2022, the Dow Jones, which is really that index for the more or less the 30 blue chip industries, top industries, it's 36,799 points. Well, as of yesterday, the Dow, or as of May 11, 2022, it was 31,540 points, a dive of 14 points. That is extremely high, and that will impact your 401k, the investments, if you have stocks, if you have bonds. All of this is in turmoil right now with a lot of instability and volatility. So in terms of unequal prices and interest rates, set up for a long ride, because this has not finished yet. And what can Puerto Rico do in terms of economic policies? Well, maybe it can look at some of the taxes that it has in terms of gasoline, for instance, and see if you can do some suspension, or at least a temporary reprieval of whatever is the gasoline tax in Puerto Rico. If you can reduce some of the excise taxes, fine. If you can at least temporarily, some of the ones that will not affect the debt service in terms of the COFINA bond issue, but at least for the sales and use tax, there must be something that Puerto Rico can control in terms of prices. Not control it totally, but at least give some relief to consumers. Don't forget, those of you who like our economic capsules, which is really our purpose, is to educate you as to how the economy works. And this is a very open economy, imported goods and services also. It also implies that we are importing inflation, and Puerto Rico has to really take a stand in terms of what is the future economic policy that it wants to undertake in the next few months or next few years. Don't forget, those of you who like our capsules, to give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube in the voice of Heidie Calero. And remember, the economy is all of us. Thank you.